Okay, welcome to another video by Adrian Davey from Pure Electric. In this video, I'm going to second fix this socket. So at the moment, I've fed the switch. So I've got a feed in, feed out, and I've got two switch wires. One that's doing a centre pendant and one that's doing some LED strip around the VLux, which I'll connect up later and show you. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just bring the camera round and I'll do it in front of me, and then you'll be able to see what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Cool. Okay, right, let's get these stripped off. So for the apprentices, what I would suggest first is that you do the feeds, because that's nice and simple. So I'm literally just going to split these, set up the centre, use my croppers just to pull I'm pulling the insulation away from the copper core, so I'm trying not to stretch that copper core too much. Some people will say that's really bad practice and you're extending you're stretching the copper out, therefore making it thinner. I would argue over that short distance it's probably not going to make too much of a difference. Might be worth doing a video on it at some point, just to prove the point. Okay. There we go. So what I tend to do is not get it stripped too far down, because you don't want these cores to drop down there. Now I have clipped these up the side of the wood. There's a wood joist right on the edge of this box, so it is fixed in. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin one of these cables over. So I'm looking at the end of these cables. I can see the brown is on the right. Same with this one, the brown is on the right. So brown's on the right here. This is the odd one out. I'm just going to spin that whole cable over. It would have been easier if I did it before I stripped it and without the camera in the way. Okay. Definitely easier without the camera in the way. Okay, now all my conductors are on the same side, which is going to make it easier to second fix. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of what should I get rid of first? I usually start at the back, so if I do the CPCs first, through there. Now because they're all going to the same place, I should be able to cut them all off the same length. So for a sort of single box about this size, what you're aiming for is to take it to that corner, take it to the furthest corner. That's your worst case scenario. Strip it off there. So the circuit is dead because I haven't connected it into the consumer unit yet, so I knew that was dead. And then when you're stripping off, you want about 10 to 11 mil of insulation stripped off. And I'm going to be using Wagos to connect these up. And then we're going to try and work out a way together of securing these cables in the back. I was going to do it for you, practice. So earth sleeving, I've got 2 mil earth sleeving. It looks a lot better if it's not baggy. At the end of the day, it makes no issue to safety, but cosmetically or aesthetically, it looks a lot better as a skinny 2 mil sleeving. Okay, one there. Now, when I was an apprentice, what I used to do is put that down to there, measure the end, sort of fold it over so you can see where the end is, pull it off the conductor, enough, and then snip it and then push it back on again. With these croppers, you can actually do it on the cable without damaging the cable. Right, so in this switch, I know that both my feeds are coming up as well, so technically I could just strip all the cables and I would know what's what, but I'm just doing this slowly for the apprentices. If all your cables are coming in the same hole at the bottom or at the top, it's always a good idea to do the feeds first. I connect the CPC in, and now I know that this is my feed. Okay. This one here is a switch wire. So it's got the neutrals all connect up at the switch because I fed the switch. And the line is going to be a switched line. Okay. Now when you're doing this, make sure you pull all the cores out of the cable. My first job as a qualified electrician, I went to a new site, obviously felt the pressure to prove myself. The first cable I stripped was a 3 core going up to a fan. It was again switch fed, and I didn't check that I'd pulled all the cores out of the cable. And as I snipped through, I cut the switch wire for the fan, which I'd left in the cable. And then I had the annoying trying to crimp it here. This was before Wagos came along, trying to crimp it with this much cable on it. Okay, and yeah, it was tough going. And that was my first cut of cable as a fully qualified electrician. You know, just finished college. So yeah, just make sure you've always pulled the cores out of the cable before you cut off the sheathing. Okay. Just put the earth sleeving on there. So you can see when I'm putting this earth sleeving on, putting it all the way up to the end, so you can't see any copper. And then with these, what I do is I sort of grip it and then I pull the sleeving back and it just snaps. So I don't actually cut through it as such. Slide it on all the way up to the end, grip it with the snips and pull, and it just snaps. Okay. Now I'm not going to connect those in, even though I know that these are switch wires. I'm not going to connect those in so the apprentices can see that this is the switch wires and these are the feeds. All right. Another thing that you can do is do what I've done here and not strip the ends. Okay, and then that can help you identify. Whatever helps, that's what you should do, especially as an apprentice, because you know once you've got all blues and browns, unless you know what those cables do, you're going to get confused very quickly. And then the last thing you want to do is connect all this up, screw the switch back. Your electrician, you know, that you're working for comes along, powers it all up, and every time somebody's putting a switch on, you've got lights switching on and off in different rooms, or you know, blowing the fuse and all that kind of stuff. Again, they should have tested before they connect on the switches anyway, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to connect up all these neutrals, and then the switch wires I'm actually just going to put into a Wago, and then I'm going to test it all in one go, then come along and take the Wagos off and put the switches on. Okay, so at this point, what I need to do is I need to count up the number of neutrals that I've got to allow me to decide which Wago to use. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 neutrals. I'll just bend these out of the way so you can see. 4 neutrals, so I want a 4-way Wago. Absolutely love Wagos. So this small little red slimline Wago is a 4-way Wago. And these just push in. I mean, you guys have probably seen all these by now. And what you're looking for is that the cable has gone, the core has gone all the way up to the end, and there's no copper showing at this end. Okay. So there we go. Give it a tug, make sure it's tight. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to dress this in at the back. Oh look, that core's come out of there. In fact, before I dress that in, I'm going to have to put these CPCs in. Okay, I'm going to put the CPCs in, and what I don't want to do is I don't want these to be crossing over each other, loads and loads, because all you're going to do is make a knot, and this copper conductor is a bit like cheese wire, okay? It will eventually start cutting through the insulation every time the switch is pulled on and off or pushed back over the years. So what I like to do is I just like to make sure that, you know, you can see I've split the line and the neutral here. I'm going to bring that through the centre like it is in the cable. Same with this one. So split the line and the neutral, take that through to the back. That way, these are at the back, these are now at the front. And they're not crossing over each other. Now, a lot of people will be complaining that this is taking too long, or, you know, why go through all that stress and hassle. And I would argue that, you know, as an electrician, whenever I go into somebody else's job, the moment you start taking the cover off the switches and sockets or consumer units, and all the cables are nicely dressed in, it puts your mind at ease. You can see that the electrician that's done it, they care about what they do. They've got a certain level of competency, professionalism, and your mind starts to ease a bit. You know, you can sort of, oh look, always give them a tug. It should not have dropped out of there. But it gives you a sense of professionalism, and then you start to relax about the job. You can see that whoever's done it has done a good job. Oh, this is going to be fiddly trying to get this screw in now. So I'm just going to put that on there, use my finger to hold it on. Oh, difficult with the camera in the way. There we go. Now you don't want to cut through the cores, but you want them to be tight. Now for some reason that is not gripping those cores. That one there is just loose. Okay, what I'm going to have to do is double that over. For some reason the machining on that brass screw at the back just doesn't want to allow this must be slipping down the side of the screw. So if I double this over, double the thickness of the cable, the screw's then going to bite down on that. It's not going to miss it, okay? Again, apologies if I'm taking too long or dancing around a bit. I'm trying not to kick the camera tripod at the same time. So, I used to be a mechanic before I was an electrician, and I was always taught that what you do is you get it sort of tight, and then you just do a sort of quarter turn, even though I've already done it, but a little quarter turn just to nip it up. Obviously, the bigger the bolt or the bigger the screw, the more you've got to torque it up first before you can do that quarter turn. Okay, so they're tight in there now, that's not coming out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try something in a minute as an experiment on this on camera, because the E5 group were talking about the not having loose conductors or loose connection, floating connection in a switch, okay, when the switch is fed. And that got me thinking, you know, because I personally, I don't see too much trouble with this, if I'm honest with you. You know, a lot of electricians may shoot me down, Again, you don't want the neutrals behind the screws, so I'm just trying to make it in such a way that these are away from there. See, I don't see any problem with that. Okay, I've dressed the cables in such a way that that's up there. I guess the problem is that if someone pulls on this cable, then it could pull out of the terminal. But these cables are clipped, so again, I can't see that being an issue, if I'm honest with you. I mean, look, I can't push that down at all. There's no slack in that. And the way that I've dressed this in, that's not moving. But it got me thinking about how we can have a workaround. And what I was wondering is whether we could, drop one of these screws out of the box, put a washer over the front, plastic washer, and then screw it back in again just to hold the cables in place, and then you don't have a loose conductor. But I'll finish the video and then I'll do that as a separate video. Okay, so these are my feeds. Again, I know these are dead because they're not connected in the board. If you were working on somebody else's job, you would test this before you even start working on it, and you would lock off the circuit that you're working on. Okay. For the purpose of testing, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put these in these lever wagos so that I can test all the way through and get my R1, R2 testing done. Okay, so that's how I'm going to leave it for now. I'm then going to test it, and then once it's tested and passed and I've got the highest R1, R2 reading, then I'll connect the switch back on. But that's how I dress a switch in, making sure that these cables here aren't behind the screws, the neutrals aren't behind the screws, etc, etc. Because I'm using a dimmer, I've put 35mm boxes in. In fact, all I use now are 35mm, I don't go for 25 anymore. And as you can see as well, I've got a PC Products socket and switch bead in here as well, which has given me this nice edge on this plasterboard wall. Perfect. Okay, any questions, guys? As always, let me know and I'll speak to you soon. Take care.